Opinions are divided among players of the original Paper Mario and its sequel, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, over which of the two is better, but I think everyone agrees that both are great games. Likewise, everyone agrees that the three games that came after Thousand-Year Door have seen a drop in quality and an increasing distance between what the games offer and what fans want. Somehow, I've still got some goodwill left for the series after how much I loved Thousand-Year Door, so when the Origami King was announced this summer, just 2 months before it was to be released, I was both excited and nervous. Now it's out, and I'm here to tell you what I thought as a veteran of the series. In Paper Mario: The Origami King, Mario and Luigi are once again heading to Peach's castle for a celebration when disaster strikes. This time around, it's the Origami Festival, and when they arrive, they discover that origami versions of their classic foes are causing trouble. Luigi heads off to find the key to Peach's castle, she and her castle get taken by the titular Origami King, and it's up to Mario to destroy the long ribbons leading to the castle, defeat the king, and rescue Peach. Fortunately, Mario's not alone. He has the king's sister Olivia to help him achieve a bit of origaminess to solve puzzles, and he meets a handful of companions who each help him for one chapter of the game. They're mainly there to help with out-of-combat things like puzzles, but they do join in the fights as well. You have no control over them, but if a turn ends and Mario hasn't beaten all of his foes, they'll typically make an attack that does so. The story is full of humor, but it includes a surprising amount of emotion as well, particularly where it comes to Olivia, as it's difficult for her to know that all of the suffering she's seeing was caused by her brother. That said, I was disappointed with how the game handled one emotional moment, when Olivia learns that a friend of hers has died. She's very sad and heads off alone to spend some time thinking and crying, which is very appropriate. But when Mario finds her again, he just does something silly to cheer her up, and that's it. Olivia's all better, grieving done. It didn't ruin my overall experience, but players who have gone through a recent loss or who are having a hard time dealing with the many well-known real-world deaths this year may have a difficult time with this section of the game. When it comes to gameplay progression, Origami King features combat that, as far as I know, is unique in all of gaming, and your facility with it will have a significant impact on your fighting enjoyment. At the start of each battle, Mario finds himself in an arena with 4 concentric rings that must be rotated and shifted to properly line him up for attacks. In normal fights, Mario's in the middle and needs to line up his enemies correctly to get them in position for either a boot or a hammer attack. Doing so in the limited time available gives him a power boost, which means if you can't solve the puzzle in the time allotted, your enemies are scattered so that you can't hit them all on your turn, and the ones you do hit are going to take less damage than they otherwise would have. A double penalty for being bad at this particular type of puzzle. Hooray! I've always enjoyed puzzles and I typically do well in solving them, so learning that I'm not very good at this type was painful, and getting hit by 2 types of penalties was a nice little squeeze of lemon on the paper cut of my failure. Fortunately, Mario's progression to greater strength and health is driven by out-of-combat exploration and puzzle solving of a more traditional type. So if you're like me, you can do your best to avoid combat whenever you don't need extra money for a shiny new item. Unfortunately, there's no getting around the boss fights, which have their own twist on the puzzles that I also wasn't good at. To the point that, I'll admit it, I cheated on the boss puzzles. With each new round of combat, I'd take a picture on my phone, send my Switch to the home screen so that no time passed in the game, solve the puzzle in as long as it took, then come back to the game and make my moves. I'm neither proud nor ashamed of this choice. It was just that or lose over and over. The game does include one bit of a return to Thousand-Year Door, though, that helped me a number of times in combat. Namely, an audience of helpful toads. As you progress through the game, you rescue them from all kinds of predicaments, and the bleachers around the combat arena fill up as you do so. At the start of each turn, you can spend some coins, which you typically have plenty of, to have them assist you. The more you spend, the more they'll help, from throwing healing hearts to throwing cans to hurt your enemies, and even making the first shift in the puzzle for you. The previous pair of Paper Mario games, Sticker Star and Color Splash, have relied heavily on consumable items for their attacks, and that mechanic is still somewhat present in Origami King, but it's much less annoying this time around. You can always make regular boot and hammer attacks, and you can easily find or purchase items to make stronger attacks, like iron boots for jumping on spiky enemies. These items are good for several uses, and their condition visibly deteriorates as you use them, so it's never a surprise when one breaks. I'm not a fan of breakable equipment, but it's rare that you actually need the breakable attacks in this game, so they don't actively detract from your gameplay experience. Sadly, the game's combat isn't properly balanced around the use of these items, which is part of the reason that they're rarely needed. For example, you can get shiny boots that hit harder than regular boots, but it's beyond rare to find an enemy who does not die using one regular boot attack, but who will die if you use a shiny boot attack. Whether you use those breakable shiny boots or not, you still have to attack that enemy twice to knock them out. Because of that, I reserved all my stronger attacks for boss fights where they might take a turn or two off the battle in the long run. In contrast to the series' wildly varying combat success, one area where the Paper Mario games have always shown is their presentation, and Origami King is no exception. The series' great aesthetic and sound design are on full display here, and it's always a joy to see them. If you've played the last few Paper Mario games, you know what to expect here. One of the collectible/unlockable items is concept art, some of which shows you the way things would be made if they were physical paper craft or origami, and I love that. The controls are also solid, leaving nothing much to note other than the fact that those playing on a Switch Lite will need to use the option to turn off the infrequently required motion controls. Those who use a Pro controller or who prefer to leave the Joy-Cons attached to their Switch can also use this option. I tried both ways and opted out of motion controls, as I almost always do when given the choice. I've played just about every Mario RPG, and I've reviewed 6 before this one, but Origami King is definitely the one that was the hardest for me to score. The things that frustrated me about it, mainly the combat, frustrated me from start to finish, but I still had a good time with it. And I even went back for a set of optional boss battle repeats after I had finished so that I could get an in-game trophy. And maybe that's the biggest compliment I could pay to this game. I liked it enough that I chose to come back for more of the part that I found the most difficult after I had finished. How about you? Do you feel like internet outrage over the way the Paper Mario series has evolved is overblown or justified? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel for more content, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can find RPGFan on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch, and of course, for all your RPG news, reviews, and more, head over to rpgfan.com.